Welcome, everyone, to the L7C podcast, My Hero Academia edition. Today, we have a very special My Hero Academia episode since it is Women's History Month and day of recording International Women's Day. We finally have our Women of My Hero Academia podcast for y'all today. And with that being said, we have the My Hero enthusiast, Andrea Alanis. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited for this podcast. Very excited for it.
It's a great coincidence that day of recording it landed on International Women's Day, and we are fully highlighting just the women of My Hero Academia.
I'd love to say this was by design when I picked the date we were recording, but it is such a happy accident. It's kind of funny.
So like we said in January when we were talking about this episode, we're going to have our top 10 strongest / best women students, like the student range for My Hero Academia at the end of season 5. One of the caveats, though, is that Big 3, Hado, she is not in the top 10 because obviously she is in the Big 3 and one of the three strongest people in the school. So she is out. We're also going to just talk about in general the women in My Hero Academia, what we like, how they're portrayed, things we might not like, and things we just downright don't like. So if you've seen the movie The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, that's going to be how it's going to be split. But first, everyone loves rankings. I think the last time we did rankings was the 100th My Hero Academia 100th episode.
Yes, it was. And that was during the season 5 training arc still, I think.
Yes, because we did our top 5 fights from My Hero Academia at that point.
Yes, we did, and I completely forgot the Stain fight. I still have that etched in my mind.
Yeah, that was a rough one, but hey, this one you're gonna bounce back with the top 10 list. So we're gonna work our way. We're gonna give our 10, and then work our way up, and then explain, probably debate, and then go from there.
For sure, debate for sure.
So I do have some honorable mentions of people I thought about in the top 10 because of their performances up to the end of season 5. Andrew, you said you had 1, right?
I have 2.
Okay. Well, you can go with your 2 because I have 4. So we'll do the honorable mentions first.
Okay. So my first honorable mention is going to be from class 1B. Mm-hmm. Her quirk is Poltergeist, and her hero name is Emily. I believe her first name or her last name is Raiko. Mm-hmm. She's the one that kind of, keeps her elbows in and droops her hands in front, kind of like ghosts and zombies in certain movies and genres. Her overall stats didn't quite make it for me into the top 10, but I thought her quirk in general was really powerful. We didn't get to see it used to the fullest, and I think down the line she could become more prominent if that's within the storyline. I just generally like her. I am a bit of a fan of characters that are more on the quiet side but are still very present and supportive of their friends, which we did see for her when Kendo was getting ready for the beauty pageant during the school festival.
Fair enough. You can go with your other one since you only have 2.
And the other one that I have is Jiro. So Jiro just got barely edged out for me in my top 10, mostly because I felt like she is limited in her fighting capacity if she doesn't have her amps. As far as I remember seeing, she can, use her earphone jacks to destroy the ground by, emitting sound waves that way. But other than that, I don't think there's much going on for her when it comes to one-on-one fighting. So that's why she's an honorable mention for me instead of in the top 10.
Okay. So I also have Jiro as an honorable mention. She was my second honorable mention. Riko, with the telekinesis that you said was your honorable mention, I actually do have her in my top 10. Also, I do, just from performance, because me and Andrea did our top 10s very differently. So we'll have different people. But so Jiro's in my honorable mentions. Lizard Tail, that was her quirk. Satsuya from Toga, whatever her name is, from class 1B. She was good. Unfortunately, she just got smoked by Bakugo's team, so that's why she's an honorable mention. I did like
Damn, we are gonna have massive differences then. Wow. She's high in my top 10 too.
I
Dang.
can't have you just because of the other people. I can't have you in my top 10 when your team when you were the leader and you lost in 5 minutes. I just can't
Fair
do that.
enough. Our criteria is so different. I get it. Fair enough.
I also had Pony Horn Cannon. She was an honorable mention for me because having an ability where you can just shoot up the place with cannons and stuff and almost have unlimited projectiles, that could be very, very problematic. And her team probably would have won if she wasn't going, if I remember, she was against the main character's team. She was against Midoriya's team. So that was a wash. My number one honorable mention, who I actually think could beat a lot of my top 10, is Cammy. Yeah, so I was going through
Okay.
I think Cammy's quirk, the illusions, there's a lot of people who she could get. And there's one hard debatable one that I'll bring up when I bring up her name in my top 10. But I just left her out a little bit because we have only seen her like twice.
Right. And not in any sort of fighting capacity, because when we did see her quote unquote fighting, it was Toga the whole time.
Yeah. So that was my top 10. And I just want to make
Your honorable mentions.
my honorable mentions. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure that, yes. So Pony, had to correct myself. Her team did not win. Her team tied.
Tied. Yeah.
Because she was on the team that tied against Shoto's team.
Yep.
But all right. So let's go from 10 on. Do you want to start with 10 or do you want me to do my 10 first? I mean, my 10th person.
I was gonna say, do you want to do my 10th person, your 10th person?
Yeah, we'll just do it that way.
Okay. My 10th person is Mushroom Girl, actually.
Okay.
She almost didn't make it on the list for me because we might as well get into how like we kind of rated these differently.
Mm-hmm.
Just for the listeners, I actually took a look at the analysis book and got all of their stats in power, speed, technique, which is another word for quirk, and then wit, which is another word for intelligence. And she basically had 2 E's, which means she had 1 out of 6s in 2 of these categories. So I couldn't put her that high. But knowing that she has that, choke out lungs for move, it could basically KO anybody. So it was hard for me. I was either putting her at number 1 or number 10. So it was a struggle for me putting her anywhere on the list.
So, like Andrea said, I saw the stats. I did not use the stats for any of my rankings. I used literally what I saw with my own eyes and read like up to season 5 and what you all saw with your own eyes in season 5 on who's improved, who didn't, because as we know, numbers can be very misleading. True. And your eyes, what you literally saw with your own eyes is what you saw. For example, so like if you're like the technique thing, it could be like fighting ability or whatnot. Like Shoto Todoroki has a 5 out of 5 in technique, but he can't fight hand to hand. So how do you have a 5 and 5 in technique?
I know. So that was something I noticed in the stats just in general, because I figured the power stat was where that was going to come from. But I realized that that's not true, because when reading, like Momo's profile, it actually mentions that she does have like skills with many different types of weapons, especially a staff. But we don't really see her actually use it in hand-to-hand combat all that much. We see it come out and we see her holding it, but we haven't really seen her kick ass with it yet. So, yes. But her power ranking was still a D, even though she does know that.
And I'll even give you even further why I just did not care about the stats, because you want to talk about power. Midoriya is an E. Midoriya is an E. He's a 1 out of 5 in power and a 1 out of 5 in speed. where he's probably physically the strongest and fastest person in Class 1A, and he's last in the ranking.
The only reason I can like logically think that is because I think power is coming from like their physical brute, like just their body as is, whereas technique is quirk. So his strength and speed is coming from his quirk, if that makes sense. So I would assume his technique is an S. I didn't look at any of the males, so I don't know. I'm just guessing.
His technique's a B. I was just saying for the fact that, like, if you look at
Seriously?
those, yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird. So that's why I was just like, I personally didn't look at the stats all per se, because also I didn't want to mess with myself if these stats were based off of end of season 5 or if these are based off of where they're at in the manga. I didn't want to mess with myself.
Fair. That's fair. I wasn't sure. I know for a lot of the characters, there were 2 sets of stats. One was from a different like data book. I'm using the Ultra Analysis book, which made it seem like it came out second. So it was at least after season 5. But I'm not sure if it does take in the manga or not. So that's fair. I honestly shouldn't have looked at the stats because it got me all sorts of messed up. And again, looking at my own top 10, since those rationalities are in there already, I can't unsee them. So my top 10 is just a little wonky, I will say.
That's fine. My number 10 was Mina.
Okay.
Yeah, so her ability with acid it's a really good ability. I mean, obviously she can shoot it out, as she showed in the joint training session. Now she can make acid shields, which is a really good thing to stopping projectiles. Right. Obviously, she had that ultimate tag team move with Mineta. So I think she is a top 10 individual currently right now. Obviously, she's very agile because of her breakdancing and dancing abilities, and she doesn't really like physically hit people like that, but her quirk is it's a very good quirk because if she does it right, you can't get near her and she can blast you. And if she gets to a point later on where she can make like a la to like Naruto, like acid clones, and you accidentally hit one and then you start getting melted, that'd be a good thing to have. So she is number 10 for me.
Nice. Okay, I'll go right into my number 9. Actually, is also Mina. The main reason why I had her low, even just like kind of off the top of my head, is even though her quirk is very powerful, she is agile, she is adaptable. She's not all that intelligent from what we've seen with her schooling, test scores, and kind of just, you can be an airhead in personality, but be very perceptive. She seems to kind of be a little spacey almost at all times from what we've seen so far. So that's why I had her lower.
Fair enough. So you had her at 9.
Yes.
Okay. My number 9, who, looking at it, if I saw more, she could, I don't know if her quirk's better than one of my top 5. I had Koda, the size quirk from Class 1B. So, I mean, the ability to manipulate the size of any non-living item she touches is literally, for anyone who watches like the MCU or reads Marvel Comics, it's literally like the Pym particles.
Right.
So I'm thinking to myself, like, that ability alone is really good. And that could be very useful in a lot of things, but we only saw her for a little bit. If I saw her more, or if she got martial arts training, like, would she beat someone who's up there for me, Uraka? Because like, you can make a comparison that their quirks are kind of similar, but if Uraka touches you, you might float. But if she touches you, you get shrunk. So it's like, if you,
it's only inanimate objects. She can only shrink inanimate objects.
That is
she can't do people.
That's true. It is only inanimate objects. But if you got a whole bunch of things, like she could toss a tennis ball at you, then it's the size of a planet.
Right.
Like if you get to that point, it's like, I don't know if a lot of people on my list would be able to beat her.
That's true.
If she like had more screen time. So that is someone who I have in my number 9 spot.
Okay, so my number 8 is actually one of your honorable mentions. I put Pony at number 8 because, not to belabor the point, her stats were actually pretty good. It also seemed like her quirk was extremely flexible, being able to, carry, teenage boys dead weight straight into the air. She can hop on her horns and fly around. She can shoot them as projectiles. And she was very quick at analyzing the situation and figuring out what they needed to do to not lose. They didn't win either, but to not lose. So that's why I put her in my top 10. Whereas, you mentioned that since they got kind of stalemated, put her more in an honorable mention situation.
Fair enough. My number 8, actually, from what I saw from her, who she was your honorable mention from class 1B with the telekinesis quirk.
Mm-hmm.
That quirk's just way too good for me to leave out of my top 10. And obviously it was our first time seeing her fight in the whole like joint training thing, but I just feel like she's just way too good to leave out. And the only reason, because her class 1B team was freaking stacked.
Right.
That they fought. The only reason they lost was literally because they lost to the main character's team. So
right.
Emily. So I just think that if you have someone who could be a Jean Grey Scarlet Witch in your school with that type of potential, that's a lot of power. So that's why I have her at number 8. And she had a good showing.
That's true. Okay, so my number 7. I'm trying to see if I want to mentally flip some of my people because I put somebody way up top because of stats solely, and now I'm regretting that decision. But all right. So my number 7, I'm actually going to do Ibarra, which is the little, the girl with the vines for hair. And initially I meant to put her higher on my listing. However, for me, with just favoring characters in general, and I feel like in fights, I think intelligence can, push past some physical limitations, power limitations, not always. And her intelligence score was lower than a couple other people immediately in front of her. So that's why I have her at number 7.
My number 7 was Mushroom.
Okay.
I mean, her team dominated their battle. She was a big part of it. You've already stated.
She was the ace in the hole. Oh my God. I was so looking, I'm sorry, going back to the stats, I was looking at her stats and I could not believe it. I'm like, she single-handedly basically won the entire match. Yeah.
Yeah, to have the ability with the mushrooms at first glance, like, oh, mushrooms take up space, but then the ability to put them in your lungs if you're underestimating her, she's way too powerful. I actually, looking at it, I kind of wanted to move her up to my 5th one is my most debated one in my head, but my 7th and 6th, I wanted to move them up to 5th and 6th, but currently she's at 7 right now just because I want to see more of her because her first impression, she dominated. So
she was low-key a little evil. I was salty. Honestly, though, thinking about it, I'm so glad she's not a villain because the damage, the chaos, she alone with her quirk could create as a villain.
Yeah, absolutely. So who's your number 6?
So my number 6. Screw it, I'm going to make the switch. My number 6 is going to be Satsuna, which is the snake lady from class 1B. I should have known her stats were going to be stacked since she was one of the 4 recommendation people. Her lowest stat was her power stat, which made sense to me because thinking about it, her in a one-on-one fight with anybody, yeah, she can, control all the pieces of her body, make them do whatever she wants when they're detached from her. But my issue was how is she going to win these fights like that? What is her finishing move? How does she end the fight? Like that's the part that I didn't quite understand, why her stats would be so great, and initially did force me to put her at number 2. Just logically for me, I had to put her at number 2.
You mean
But
6?
no, I did. Initially, I had her at
Oh,
number 2
oh
because
God, Jesus.
no, legitimately, Martin, her stats for power was a C, and then her speed was an A, her technique was an A, and her intelligence was an A. So I'm just like, oh my God, I couldn't logically put her lower than some of these other people with other stats. So that's why I was just like, oh, but I still can't wrap my head around the fact that I don't know how she would finish a fight one-on-one. Like I don't know. We haven't seen it. So I would like to see that. I would like to be able to match these, stats that are in the analysis book with what we saw in the anime. Maybe we've seen it in the manga. I don't know. But so because of our discussion so far, I'm switching her to my number 6.
Yeah.
So
because like I said, she was in my honorable thing because with all those stats, your team lost in 5 minutes to basically one dude. Like I'm just
but he's one of the top 3. He's also got main character power.
If all your stats are that high, you should not lose to one person. And the other people playing support when you have a whole team behind you and you lose in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason. I mean, it'd be the same thing if I was ranking the guys and I couldn't have like Shoto at in the top 2. You had all those people, and the last time I saw you, you lost. Last time I saw you in the the third movie you did better. Second movie, you were terrible. It's like I don't care what you're saying. If I'm literally seeing you underperform, I can't have you up there. And she was talking all of that mess.
Oh my God, I know she was. Yes, she was. And I really thought she was going to pull up and give them a run for their money, and then it just didn't happen. I know part of the reason for that is to show Bakugo's growth as a leader and a potential hero, but like, damn. Okay. So yeah. So she's my number 6.
That's my number 6 because she is actually very, in my opinion, very strong. Was Vi, who you've already mentioned. Her ability, it's like also another thing, obviously, like her moves to mimic her religious beliefs and all of that. But her thorns, they could shoot out at you. They could make a shield. She got to a point where she could detach them. She can, from the whole hero standpoint, she could catch villains by herself with her thorns and leave them for the police. Like her just overall abilities, and she's a very hard person to beat.
To fight. Yeah, she is.
Like one-on-one. Like if you would have given her an extra person on her team probably could have beat Shinsho and Froppy's team. Because like she was very her ability is just very good. It can go from the ground. It's one of those things like where she could literally be behind a shield and have all these other vines just attacking you, and you have to get through the shield. It's almost to the point. It's like, it's not, I won't say it's as strong as stuff, but it's like comparing it to like Naruto, their wood style. Like you can literally just go through anything, and because she did pretty well also in the sports season 2. So it's like she is very powerful. Obviously, she's a minor character, but if she could get to a point where she gets more screen time and all that, like especially the detaching, like you can make that into vine spears and vine all that, and every time you're attacking, they have to block your physical attack and your vine's attack. Like that's why I have her at number 6.
Okay. So my number 5, right? We're on number 5?
Yep.
Yes. My number 5 is actually Momo. Part of the reason for that is she is extremely intelligent. She is able to create anything that, she understands the molecular structure of from the lipids in her body. So she's very she's good in a pinch because she can make things that you needed that you didn't know you need. And she's very, forward thinking, making plans. However, she still has a bit of a problem in thinking on her feet and adapting to an evolving situation. And she does still have problems with close quarters combat. Like, I know she's not necessarily ever going to specialize in that, but she needs to beef up her close quarter defense so she can continue to be of help to people. That's why I have her at number 5. I know that sounds mostly negative, even though she's in my top 5. It's just, I wish I could put her higher.
So my number 5 is also Momo, but I'm at the point too where she was the one I struggled with the most because she was either going to be 5 or she wasn't going to be on the list.
Oh, damn.
Because that was one of my things too, where if Cammy fought Momo, I don't know who would win. And that's a problem. Because you talked about thinking on their feet. If Momo, like, she's not like she has the Sharingan or anything. So
right.
If she's in a whole bunch of illusions, I don't know if she'd beat her. I don't know if
right.
Momo would beat Vine. I don't know if Momo would beat Mushroom.
My only thing with Mushroom is now that she knows about it, because I think since Momo didn't know about it, she didn't make them gas masks. If she knew about it, she would have made them gas masks. Like, she would have done something to prevent that from happening. So I think going forward, maybe she would be able to win because Mushroom Girl doesn't really have much for power speed at all. Whereas Momo has a little bit. And if she's able to wear a gas mask, then she'd be protected from that.
She
or
would
just,
be.
Yeah.
At that end point of season 5, but also from a thing, Mushroom's team beat her soundly.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things too, where I was like sitting there looking at Momo, like, I have no, and we're so far past that Todoroki. I would have been more impressed with a Todoroki Eraserhead if it was a different dude who motivated Momo and not the person she admires and we all think she's gonna end up with. So it's like I'm sitting there looking, I was like, you didn't do anything in season 3. We really didn't do anything in season 4. Your team got blitzed in season 5. You didn't do anything in any of the movies. So it's like, and then just compare, like, I don't know how she beat Vine, like the Mushroom thing now after seeing the abilities. But if they would have fought one-on-one at the start the first time, she'd lose.
Yep.
And like, okay, if she fought their Jean Grey here, okay, you're shooting your cannons, but if she can telekinesis stuff and throw it right back at you, what are you going to do? If she fought Coda, who does the size, what are you going to do? Because you're shooting inanimate objects. She can change those to micro things. And if we saw more of her, and if she has any remote hand-to-hand ability, she's getting killed. Like Cammy, I literally have in her notes, her versus Momo, who would win? And I'm like, the only reason I give it to Momo is because I've seen more of her. If I saw that Cammy had like Uraka trained martial arts, she'd smoke Momo. So that's just like where I named 1, 2, 4 people beneath her. No, 5 if I include Cammy, who I think could beat Momo. The only person I don't think who would be able to beat her is Mina. And that's I don't think she'd be able to beat her, but that's my thing. Like, she was the hardest debated person because she has a fantastic work, but I know she's one of your favorites, but she, in the grand scheme of all the people, especially the people above her, she's been garbage.
She just hasn't risen up, and I feel like the flexibility of her quirk hasn't been explored more. Like, obviously she can create things, and that's what she's doing all of the time, but maybe it's because we're focusing more on like fighter type heroes. Obviously there are other types of heroes, like those that specialize in search and rescue. Obviously you do need to know how to fight, but that's not their primary focus. So I feel like her primary focus is creating support and leadership. I need to see more. Like we've said, we need to see more growth in her areas of weakness, because we know she can be a leader. We know she can create these things. Like, that's not new. Like, what we need to see some sort of innovation in her quirk, I feel like.
I would even talk. I mean, I would even push back on the leadership thing because if a leader gets super flustered and it messes up the team, how good of a leader are you?
That's true too. That's fair. More that when I say leader, thinking of just organizing, not necessarily thinking on the feet, because she's not very cool headed. She's not.
No. So she was the hardest. Like I had her as high, as 5 was as high as I was going to go, just because I've seen her more. Or I was going to have her at 10 or completely out of the top 10.
I got you. I got you. Okay.
Who was your number 4?
My number 4 was Kendo.
Well, I'll just jump in on that. That's my number 4 too. You beat Momo literally by your like face to face. I had nothing more to say. If you had more, go ahead. But I have.
See, my only thing was that I did debate because it seemed like if this was a one-on-one fight, I feel like it would have been different because Momo's attention was obviously partially on how to get the rest of the team to win and complete the mission. Because in terms of the mission, they both won. They both incapacitated the other. Although Momo was completely like knocked out. So technically Kendo could still move, but she wasn't able to get away. Like she was captured in the, hero versus villains need to get captured before the police arrive. Technically Momo would have quote unquote won that fight in that, frame of reference. But I feel like the two of them really could go back and forth if it's just the two of them and they don't have to worry about fighting. I think it would be back and forth. But I do put Kendo on top just because Kendo does have more physical power per stats. And just from what we've seen, like there's more force in her big hands than Momo could muster throwing a punch or swinging her staff around. It just makes sense.
Yeah, I like with Momo and Kendo, I'm never going to have someone above someone I just saw beat. Like her team won. She was the leader of her team. Even from all other things like leadership and all of that, she is the clear, undisputed leader of Class 1B.
True.
And everyone, even the crazy dude, they all respect her from her actions in the classroom to the battlefield. Like she's more proven to her class as a leader than Momo is to Class 1A. Because even Eraserhead doesn't see her. When Eraserhead, during the provisional thing, Kendo moves the needle for Class 1B. She is the driving force. In Class 1A, quoted by Eraserhead, Shoto and Momo are not the driving force. They are not the needle of Class 1A. It is Midoriya and Bakugo. Everyone is trying to catch and follow them. While in Class 1B, everyone is trying to catch, follow, and they die for Kendo. Like that's how much of a command with her leadership that she has over them. So when you got crazy dude talking about how great you are, yeah, she's a top 4. Who is your number 3?
So my number 3 is Uraka.
Okay.
My number 3 is Uraka. I knew I was going to have her fairly high up. I will say, stats-wise, other than that snake girl, I was surprised at Uraka stats. She's the most balanced out of everyone that I looked up. Again, I only looked at the female characters. She basically overall has an average of a B+, with her quirk being set as an A. I think Uraka learning martial arts really stepped up the game. The only thing I didn't really consider when thinking about one-on-one fights was her new equipment, the new basically like catch and grab wires that she has on her wrist, because I was thinking about it because I struggled with putting Kendo above Uraka because I wasn't sure who would win in a one-on-one fight.
Me either.
Right. So I basically put Uraka above Kendo based on the fact that Uraka does have the most balanced stats. And for me, I'm a sucker for somebody who's pretty good in all areas, just in general. So Uraka's my number 3.
Well, looks like top 5 are similar. I have Uraka at 3, 2. I struggled with her for the fact that I mean, obviously everyone knows about season 2, and then she was really gone for most of the rest of the series until like season 5, and then she was in season 4, but you really didn't see her fight like that. But I
No.
mean, she's improved. She can fight hand to hand for a bit. Would still like to see her use her quirk better. My dream for Uraka, which that's what I was just thinking too. Like, man, if her and Kendo fight, I really don't know, because I don't know if Uraka's just taking those punches to the face. Like that's, or like if she fought someone who, for Uraka's stuff, she needs to get near you. If she fought someone like a Vine who you could stay away from, she doesn't have blitzing speed like a Bakugo or a Midoriya to get close. If she fought someone like a Mushroom, that like, and she gets stopped like that, or telekinesis, or the size stuff, like all those things, I was just like, man, there's a lot of people. I think
it's hard. It's hard. My thing with thinking about Uraka was about thinking back to the like sports festival when she floated the whole team and they were using Tokoyami's, ability to fly them around. I'm not sure why Uraka hasn't invested in support gear that would help her fly. Like that would for me, I think, change the game for her a little bit.
My thing that would change it for her is if she was able to make that touching, there's zero gravity ability in the form of like her version of Gentle Fist.
Yes. Oh, that would be so cool.
That would be the next level.
So cool.
That would be the next level for her, because now people have to stay away from you, because every time you're punching someone, you're making something float, or like things like that. Like that would be my next step for her.
Mm-hmm.
Where then she would be competing with my top 2 people. But from the way it seems, like we've had 5, 4, 3, 2, and we had 5, 4, and 3 the same. Yep. Who is your number 2?
Okay, so my number 2 is Froppy. My number 2 is Miss Froppy, because I just think out of complete fighting ability, being quick on her feet, being level-headed, and being very adaptable in her different abilities coming from a frog, I just think she's done the best out of all of them when it comes to fighting. And I think we've seen her fight probably the most out of all the girls in Class 1A. Since she was, with Midoriya during the USJ incident, oh my gosh, I'm blanking. We saw her quite a bit in, oh my gosh, what was it? Oh, the exam, the licensing exam. I know her biggest, moment during the first part of it, though, was her nearly getting frozen to death and put in hibernation. But I think in general, she's just a strong teammate to have and leader, because she was basically the leader of her team.
So the reason I had Sue at number 2 is when you think of the complete hero game, Sue has, and I'm not even being like in the moment or hot take, if you analyze it to a T, Sue has no weaknesses. She has none for all the hero game. She can fight. She can do recon with her camouflage. She can save people. She could do underwater stuff with her ability. Like she can do what I guess combat, reconnaissance, and stealth, which I think are like the 3 like biggest hero type things you need to be able to do. She can do all 3. And there's not that many, if any, who can do all 3.
All 3. Nah.
Like she has no weaknesses. And the time where she got the spotlight, season 5, her team won. Mostly because of her like showing the camouflage ability. The only thing I would wish for, and she has enhanced stamina, obviously. I mean, especially when she's in the water. She was 6 on the midterms. People really don't talk about that enough. You already talked about how it was her, Midoriya, Mineta at the beginning. Mm-hmm. Like she's the one who got attention from Hato, who Hato's the 3rd strongest student in all of UA. And Hato recommended her and Uraka to be at their internship. Obviously, she was in the raid. Like she doesn't have any weaknesses. Obviously, her leg strength's super strong because she's a frog. The only thing I'd be like, if she can get like a physical, like a little bit strong physically, upper, like with punching power, like sky's the limit for her. Like she does not have a weakness.
No, not really. Her weakest stat, since I was the one that looked at him, is power, which again I think goes to just like kind of physical muscle power, which you already said would be a boost for her. My thing, when I was thinking about her fighting, other than incapacitation by wrapping people up with her tongue, I was wondering though if she could start incorporating some of those kind of like Gran Torino-esque kind of bursts of speed and acceleration to make contact with people to put them down. I know we've seen her do it, I think, a couple of times in one strike, but obviously as you know, your opponents get stronger, you would need potentially more than that. So I wonder if she would benefit from taking those types of notes from Midoriya, just kind of having that go for her. Maybe, honestly, she probably doesn't need it, but that was something I thought would be cool for her to do.
Like the only people I could see beating Sue are people who are overly physically stronger than, like, omegally physically stronger than her, or who have plot armor. Because right now, I mean, Sue is the second highest person on our list, both of our lists respectively. She's the number one highest person from class 1A. And I'm just going to say, I'm assuming your number one is Toga.
Yeah, it is. Because, I mean, that if Toga wasn't on my list, Froppy was number one. Yeah. Sue was number one.
So I can make the argument where from the past performances, Sue is probably the fourth strongest person in class 1A, if not third.
Yeah.
If you really, because then
if you're really trying to put Todoroki down.
If you're, well, I mean, Todoroki, like,
not undeserved. I'm not saying it's undeserved.
I'm just saying, like, obviously, I actually don't know how that fight would go, if we're going to be completely honest. Like a Sue versus Todoroki, like, and if you're just doing the whole hero thing, like, Todoroki can't do stealth like Sue. Nope. Like like the reconnaissance, I mean, like saving people, but you're freezing them. Sue, you get the tongue, like the camouflage, like those. Her abilities is just like, if you don't count Midoriya and Bakugo, she's like 1 or 2 in 1A, which is crazy. But we both got Toga. I mean, I don't.
Yep. I mean, you can't. Now that she's unlocked the ability to use other people's quirks with her quirk, plus she's agile, she's good with knives.
She's the best hand-to-hand combatant on this thing. I think second, she's the best one currently at the end of season 5 on this.
Also, talk about stealth. During doing my research, I completely forgot that, you know, when Midoriya like ran into quote unquote Cammy, who was Toga, he asked about that whole like, oh, how do you make your mind go blank so that, you know, people can't pick up on where you are? I completely forgot about that. That is crazy that she can just make her presence disappear, and that's not even part of her quirk.
Yeah.
Like, insane.
Yeah, I have nothing more to add to her. Like, once she got that upgrade at the end of season 5, she's the strongest girl right now. I don't think still she'd be able to beat a big 3 person by herself. Maybe, but she is by far the strongest of this top 10. So our top 5s were the same. I think I just had more pushback that I could have dropped Momo from 5 to out of the list. If I had to if I was really sitting and did more work today, I probably could have I don't think she can beat this person. She would have just dropped lower and lower. Because I really don't know if she'd be able to beat Cammy. I really don't.
Yeah, I just didn't consider Cammy since I don't know enough about her. I hadn't seen enough about her. I know I looked at her stats, but it was just like, I feel like this is unfair. Because at least for every other character, I could see the stats and I've seen at least a little bit of them. Cammy, I just saw her make illusions. I don't know if there's a limit to her illusions, if she's able to do much else outside of that. I just don't know enough. So I couldn't really put her in there.
I was just myself. Like, Genjutsu is a powerful thing for someone who can't, if they get flustered, that's a powerful, that like you do an illusion that wouldn't sit right with Momo's head and you got to fluster because Momo's very easily flustered. And then it's, but if we see more like if Cammy shows up in the war and starts beating everybody up, is going to be like, well, Momo, I'm sorry, you're out of here, you lose. But there was some other stuff before we go like into our good, bad, and all that stuff that I did do because I wanted to shout out stuff. To the women who do the tech support, May and Melissa Shield from the movie.
Yes.
I put both of them down, shouting out they wouldn't be able to get where they're at. A lot of these heroes both have helped actually Midoriya a lot.
I was gonna say specifically Midoriya.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, specifically Midoriya.
So they both have helped her a lot. So I made sure I put a tech support. My other thing too, just highlighting since it is Women's History Month, Mirako, like the women who are currently in the hero rankings that we know, Mirako is the number 5 hero. So she's the highest rated woman right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you have Ryoku, the dragon.
Yep.
She is currently ranked 10th. She used to be 9, but she's still a top 10. And then you have Mountain Lady, who is currently ranked 23. Want to shout out the only women teachers we've seen in all of this series. Midnight from class, obviously from UA. And then you had Miss Joke from her Ketsubushi Academy High School. So I just wanted to make sure we shout out every woman that we've seen in their capacity and shout out their contributions.
For sure. For sure.
So now going into the last part of the pod, things we like, don't like, or want changed. So what's good about the women in My Hero Academia? Andrea, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
You go ahead.
Okay. So with this, I have 2 points, but they're overlapping 2 big points. Okay. My first one was variety, because there's a whole bunch of women with different abilities. They all look different. They all have different personalities. So that gives a lot of people to find who they like, find who they relate to. I think that's a big thing, because if every woman is the same in an anime, that's just right. Cookie cutter stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's my big number one. My number 2 is they all can do something. In parentheses, I said there's no season 1 Sakura syndrome. All of these women can be heroes. It's not like part 1 Sakura where she's always crying, begging for a Naruto or Sasuke to save her. You don't see
help.
You don't see Uraka begging for Bakugo or Midoriya to like save her like that. Like I said on the last one, which I've harped forever, that Uraka and Bakugo would be Sasuke and Sakura the right way. Because, I mean, if the strongest person, or 1A, 1B, depending on what you think of Midoriya versus Bakugo, is acknowledging you, well, shoot, the 2 strongest people acknowledge your abilities in there. You never saw that you don't see that in other animes early.
No.
Where the women really are getting acknowledged for all of their abilities. So those were my 2 biggest things that what I really like about the girls in My Hero Academia. Variety, all different. You can like who you want to like. They all can do something. They all can be heroes, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. And obviously in these current rankings, you got 2 women in the top 10. And if you went to a Naruto, I mean, if you exclude Tsunade or whatever, at the earliest of part 1, you don't have any woman who's one of the 10 strongest people in the show.
That's true.
So what were things that you really like about the women in My Hero Academia?
So I overlapped with you for the diverse personalities. Mm-hmm. I do think they could use, I know this is getting a little bit into maybe what we would like to change. It's not that terrible, but in going into that they look different. They do, but most of them have a pretty standard body shape, or not standard body shape. Most of them are built heavy on top and bottom. It's just varying degrees of which. And I feel like that could be worked on just a teeny bit. But I love that they all have, different personalities. They all have different values, motivating factors. Something that I really appreciated for My Hero is that even though there are multiple female characters and there's a little bit of a slice of life element going on with them all being in high school and stuff, that when the girls are all together, they're not solely just talking about boys. They're not solely talking about, oh my gosh, who's the strongest boy? Who do you like the most? who do you have a crush on? Who do you think he has a crush on? All that type of stuff doesn't really happen. There's, of course, a little bit of mention with, Mina poking at Uraka, being like, oh, you have a crush on him, don't you? But it's not every single time that the girls are by themselves that they're all talking about a boy or boys. And I really appreciated that. I also really like that when the students all do break away into their own just kind of primary friend groups, not all the girls, stick all together and not all the boys stick all together. Like they intermingle with each other. And I really enjoyed that.
Okay. Now we're into the things that we'd like to, little things we're like, maybe some change, like bad, but not bad. So my thing was, the only thing I have is, depending on where you're looking at it, it isn't bad, but like you just said, and I literally have it in parentheses, 99% of the women on My Hero Academia have perfect shape, proportion, slim waist. I mean, I'm just going to like breasts, like thighs, like basically all of them are built in a way that they are perfect. From a superhero standpoint, obviously superheroes are things that you want to inspire to. So you want to inspire to potentially look like that. But currently there's no normal looking hero. I guess you could say the most normal one is Jiro, but that's just because she's lower.
And that's because she's the butt of the joke as well.
Yeah, she's the butt of the joke, that she's lower on the chest side, but I can maybe make a guarantee. I don't want to say guarantee, but I guess maybe by the time she's an adult, that's probably going to change unless they keep her like the butt of the joke. But there's no normal like hero who has from an inch of like body fat or like cellulite or anything like that. So I think going forward, you do want to have like that one normal looking female hero where it's like, okay, well, she looks like, if like My Hero Academia motivates you, she looks attainable. Like if I work out, I could look like that. I mean, I'm not going to go spend, from a female's perspective, like thousands of dollars to have the waist or upper proportions or the behind like some of these girls. But it's like a normal looking person was like, if I work out, take care of myself, I can be a hero like her, especially for like the younger people watching this, because all the younger people are going to think that to be a hero, you have to look like Momo. You have to look like Cammy. Like there's, like you said, there's no girl there that does not have perfect proportions. It's just a difference of perfect. From a younger thing, that's a little dangerous. Even from an older thing, like from like our age and up, it's like, I'm watching these people and I'm watching them train and I'm over here eating Cheetos and I'm never going to look like Momo. So that's the only thing I was like, quote unquote bad about the women, that they're mostly all perfect physically.
Right. But I mean, on the flip side, not to like detract, it's just, I mean, the boys are all ripped as well. Like that's not typical. It's not normal. So it's
there's some where I can make the argument that they're not as like jacked.
They're not as crazy. Yeah, they're not as crazy. They're not like,
I can't make that for any of the women though.
Right. That's true. For me, under like things I would like to change is, I feel like season 5 like cranked up the fan service a little bit. And I just rewatched My Hero from the beginning with my dad, and I honestly didn't catch how much fan service there was in the earlier seasons until I was watching it with my dad, and I was like, wow, okay. Yeah, could we not just scale it back just a little bit? I know at least in the earlier seasons, for me, I noticed most of the fan service was geared towards the adult heroes, like they're adults, they're now heroes. You obviously had those moments with Momo because of her quirk, but it seemed like during season 5, they really kind of brought it out for, the class 1A, 1B girls, and they're girls, they're still in high school.
I mean, I know there was one point when we were watching it together where it was Midoriya's fight, and like, I think almost all of them were just like, oh, you had your favorite waifu. Remember, this person is built like this. Don't forget about her. Like I remember on YouTube when they had the like the things of Mina,
Mm-hmm.
like when they were like when she was stretching, and I just remember seeing the comments like, oh my gosh, I forgot Mina was. And it's just like I felt like almost everything was a reminder to pick your favorite like.
Yeah.
But I just think that that's also a hard thing too because from like the fan service thing, I mean that's helping them make money. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
anime that doesn't have fan, and I think also depending on if you're a boy or a girl, just like the way you
It's the
look
way it
at.
comes across, honestly. Personally, for my taste, I feel like it's one of those things where you can't avoid if someone's attractive. It's just constantly calling attention to it in
Mhm.
a way that seems uncomfortable or objectifying, if that makes sense. Like, I know there's probably a lot of fan service, particularly with like Todoroki. He's got a fire quirk. So when he uses his fire side, he ends up losing half of his clothes almost all
Mhm.
of the time. So,
Mhm.
like, logically, that makes sense. Just like with Momo, like, she has to create things out of her body fats. So, like, her clothes get ripped quite a bit. It's just, it's kind of like the point with Momo is more belabored, especially since you have a character like Mineta kind of pointing things like that out. So, it's the way it's shown is a little bit different and it's more, I feel like it's kind of quicker with like Shoto versus Momo. It's not, you have that frame for a few more seconds with Momo than you do with Todoroki, if that makes sense. And it's
Yeah.
also just kind of like, oh, well, who cares? Versus with Momo, it's like, oh my God, you've got Jiro embarrassed in the background, like trying to cover her up since Denki's outside and all these other villains are outside.
Yeah. But that's one of my things too. Like that's never gonna leave. It's never gonna leave anime from a boy or girl perspective. I mean, when people talk about fan service and give, I guess those I'm gonna say a tough time, but a harder time, and then I'm like, so what do you watch? And it's just like from an American thing. Oh, you watch Too Hot to Handle or Love Is Blind. I was like, so perfect dudes and perfect women. And
Right.
then like if you think of like so you're watching fan service too, and then they're stumped. So it's like, but obviously from that it's just like in high school, like an anime thing. But then you get to a point where they all start because Japan in high school is like right before adulthood. So it's like that is something that you could tone it down a little bit, but you'll just see it ramped up again. Hell, look at from another anime, just look at Demon Slayer.
Yeah, no, that was one personally for me. I was kind of disappointed in. Obviously, with the season in the entertainment district, okay, that makes sense. I just my thing was with spoiler alert was with Nezuko's like amped up transformation. Like there was honestly no need. There was no need,
Yeah, but
in my opinion.
yeah, it's tough because then I mean, fan service makes it sell, and then fan service helps those independent artists who make all those images of Shoto and Momo and all of them and get paid for it. So it's like if they don't do it, someone else is going to do it, and someone else is going to make money off it. So from like a company thing, like might as well do what you need to do. But yeah, they can tone it down. They can tone it down a bit because fan service will never not be an anime. That's just
Right,
impossible.
for
And
sure.
anime, games, movies that just won't leave. So my ugly, which I've talked to you about off pod, and it's my only ugly, which is a big ugly. Could the story go on without them? Like if you take all the women out from currently right now, what true purpose do they serve? Which is a bad thing to say, but if you really look at it, you can change all the stuff out and be perfect. And the main story still continues. A young man trying to live up to his idol's expectations. You don't need them. The only
Right.
woman who was a center focus was a child, and that was Aerie, which you could still have her be the center focus. That's my biggest thing. Like, what true purpose? Like, could if I'm thinking about if the story could go on without you without a hitch, that's a problem.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because I think I made that comment during an earlier pod. I don't remember which one. from an earlier podcast is you can, unfortunately, take out all of the My Hero characters and the story could progress. The only, like, the only example I had of like a woman that's integral to the story is All Might's master. Like, she's technically the only one that couldn't be pulled out. But at that time, it's like she's a placeholder. So technically speaking, she could have been a man and everything would be completely as it is. It's just so happened that All Might's master was a woman. It's just like, we're getting all these diverse female characters. And, you know, in the beginning, at least, we thought we were going to see more, you know, focus on side characters continue throughout. Whereas now we're getting a little bit of, you know, baby big three tunnel vision on Todoroki, Midoriya, and Bakugo. But that's so sad. Like, it is so sad that the whole story can move forward and have none of the female characters involved.
And even if people are like, oh, you can't take all of them out. So if we really like, this story can move on completely and none of these women have a major role.
Yeah.
Like they could all be freaking just minor characters, like mega minor characters who you don't see. And this story would chug lighter on, especially with season 5 with like you just said, it's Midoriya, Bakugo, and now Todoroki because it's his dad's agency. But yeah,
right. And it's just, I mean, the only female character I know people would argue has to be integral to the story is Uraka because she's Midoriya's love interest at this time. But it's just like, but that's also part of like, it's an icky feeling because she's part of, you know, she quote unquote can't be removed because she's somebody's love interest, not because she's so ingrained in making the plot go or achieving a certain goal. It's
well, you said this a long time ago with a different thing when we were talking. They could remove Uraka if Midoriya was gay. She could be out easy. And then she really has and I like her, she would have no purpose to the show.
And it's really sad. I find that to be really disheartening. Obviously that's not going to happen.
Oh, no.
But it's just sad to be able to think about this anime and honestly a few other ones where, you know, the main characters, the main plot doesn't really integrate female characters in a way that they're needed in the story.
Yeah, because when I think of all the animes of past and all that, Dragon Ball would not be able to continue, like it wouldn't be able to be what it is if it wasn't for Bulma. Bulma is the second most important person in that series. She's even more important. Obviously, her husband's top 3, Vegeta, but she's the second most important person in that entire series. She's the one who found Goku first. She's the one who started the journey. If her and Goku don't meet and all that stuff, Dragon Ball never happens. Like
and they didn't abandon her. Like, that's the other point. Because technically, yeah, you could have had somebody like find him and then get him on his path and then, you know, find a reason to like write her off. But that didn't happen.
Yeah. So I was just thinking about all the different like animes that I like. That's like, you couldn't take that person out. I'll even go from Dragon Ball. Can't do that with Bulma. Obviously, she marries the rival and she has a child who becomes friends with the goat. So can't take her out.
Nope.
Yu Yu Hakusho. You can't take out Keiko, or I even think Botan. Botan's more important. You can't take out Botan because she's the one from the beginning. She is basically blue hair and all. She is Yusuke's Bulma.
Yep, she is.
Like, she's literally Yusuke's Bulma. You can't take her out. So those are like two of the biggest things right now. Even recent, like we go recently, you can't take Nezuko out because he's the only surviving sibling that Tanjiro has, and she is the main plot of the entire Demon Slayer, which people don't realize. The main reason Tanjiro became a Demon Slayer is to make her sister go back to being a human.
Yeah,
she's the center plot.
My only argument against that, because like part of me like is on the fence about like Demon Slayer not moving forward. Obviously you can't because Nezuko is his sister and that's the whole reason he became a Demon Slayer. However, how easy could it have been for the author to make it be one of his brothers instead of his sister?
If they would have made it one of his brothers, then they would have to make one of Tanjiro's friends. They would have to turn Zenitsu to a girl. Because for sure. Because they're going to get married. So that's the other main sub thing with that point. And obviously, I don't want to go into more spoilers of that anime, but there's more reasons why Nezuko is going to be uber important going forward. So I was just thinking about like all the other stuff, like Gundam Wing. You can't have that without Relina because of her relationship with the main like hero, and her being the one that gets world peace, and like all the anime I used to like watch. Just like, yeah, there are some very important females that you cannot take out. But like here, it's like, or give them minor roles. Here, it's like you could give them super minor roles and just be going back to the thing, just perfect shape women fan service, and no one would blink an eye. They're like, oh, well, they're not doing anything, but got to see what they're looking like in their outfit today. So,
yep.
But I would hope that would change. But then now they're putting more emphasis on Todoroki. So it's like that's taking a spot. And I just think back in the past, there'd be few things. If they would have had one of the girls in the Stain fight, that would have really solidified some stuff for them.
Yes.
Like I was just thinking about like top moments. Obviously, a big woman fight that we're assuming is going to happen near the end. It's going to be Uraka versus Toga. One of them. Sure. I mean, if Midoriya does end up with Toga, with Uraka that we all think she will, that means Toga's probably going to die. But then we'll have that sob thing. But who knows? We don't. I mean, the story's not over yet. We don't know who's ending up with anyone. Like they can just curveball, like we said on our Valentine's Day thing. But that's my thing. I just want more importance. Like in the war, I want an Avengers Infinity War moment, like when it was Scarlet Witch, Okoye, and Black Widow versus one of like from Thanos' thing. So I want like Uraka, Froppy, and she needs to be in this so she can get more cred. Momo versus Toga. I want a fight like that where it's like 3 episodes strictly focused on that fight.
That would be great. I don't think it's going to happen. I think 3 episodes is a little ambitious, but I hope, honestly, that's a good goal. I would love to see that. I would love to see that. And
I would also like to see, I mean, it's by design, but Midnight should not be the only female teacher at UA.
Seriously. Yeah, for sure.
And we don't even see her fight. Like the most we saw was that the Mineta thing, which his team, him and his person passed. And her having that argument with with Mount Lady about basically being cougars and pumas. Like that's all that it was being argued about. So she needs to fight more. So I was just thinking of that stuff. So what was your so, and did you
my ugly was the exact same. No, my ugly was the exact same. The only thing, this wouldn't be considered ugly. I would put it under bad is the show is decreasing the amount of time for development for some of the side characters. And I know that's just universal for the, male and the female side characters. Because again, the baby big 3 tunnel vision. I would just like to see more of that again for the girls and for the guys. Like I just want to see more of the character development for the students that we became attached to in season 1 and 2, because we did see them all. And now we've seen some of them have, kind of big jumps. I got extra excited revisiting how Hagakure was able to refract light out of nowhere. That was something I didn't really consider with an invisibility quirk. So I do want to know more about some of those characters. I do. So, but that's my only thing. The ugly really is that My Hero could maintain its course without any of the female characters.
Yeah, and obviously like hyper thing would be like all of them just disappear, which wouldn't happen, but more realistically, they have no big moments for the rest of the series. And then that's just bad.
I feel like it's such a waste of potential too, because you do have such really good, strong, diverse characters and quirks belonging to female characters.
I would also want to because Hado is obviously in her big 3 with Lemillion and them, but like from previous big 3s was like Eraserhead and Present Mike and Oh Dude. But obviously, going forward, which I don't think we'll get like a second year. I think we're only going to see this first year, then time skip, yada, yada, yada. But I would like from like the season 5 intro for them to make it a big 5. Like make it the big 5. And have Uraka and Froppy in the big 5.
Yes.
Because that's who would be in it. So that you're like, hey, 2 out of the 5 in the big 5 are females, and they're in the top 5 strongest people in all of UA.
And it's not even a huge drop off. It's not, I mean, between, Bakugo and maybe Midoriya, but you could make arguments again with that fight between Uraka and Bakugo. Like, it's not like they're totally in a world class of their own, like with Naruto and Sasuke versus Sakura. Like the difference is so stark that it's just kind of like, yeah, she's there, but she's just kind of there. For a really long time in the series versus Froppy and Uraka are, I feel like, closer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, which makes sense. But yeah, that's really it. That was a fantastic episode, I would say. So next month, I guess it's your turn to pick what we talk about too. Because this was my pick.
Shoot.
Yeah, this was my pick.
It was your pick, and I completely forgot we were still switching off on who was picking what. Dang it. I'm going to have to get back to you on that, sir.
That is perfectly fine, but...
To be announced.
But since it is exactly International Women's Day on day of recording, and it is Women's History Month, all of the ladies who have their podcast episodes will actually be the final word of the pod. So, Andrea, the floor is yours.
All right. So thank you, everybody, for listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Also, just happy International Women's Day to everybody. I think it's very important that we do keep discussing, female characters in anime, also talking about the different female anime authors, illustrators, people that do anything within this industry, as well as every other industry possible. I think, I know that women can do anything. It's just hard for us to get our feet in the doors and continue to break, the glass ceilings. And I am just super excited to see what the future holds for, all of us. And honestly, part of me hopes that we can get to a point within our lifetimes that we can have a show like My Hero Academia where the entire cast, not the entire cast, but the primary cast is female, and it's not necessarily like a magical girl anime. I think people might enjoy that more than they think they would. A male audience might enjoy that more than people think they would, without having to be over the top fan service, if that makes sense. But thank you guys for listening to us, and I hope you continue to listen to the different podcasts that the L7C puts out there. Shout out to all the women contributors. I love listening to all of y'all talk about what you're enthusiastic about. And yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.